Hey everyone, it is Irene Lyon here. Welcome to this live stream. If you're watching this live right now, it's possible, or if you're watching this right now, it's possible you're on the recording. So thanks for checking this out after the fact. If you're here live, it is the 5th of March. I'm Irene, obviously, and I'm going to dive into some questions that were submitted to my email support around SmartBody SmartMind, and also known as SBSM, what it is all about in relationship to some of these questions. If you have a question specific for me around SmartBody SmartMind, and I'll give a little rundown of that in a second. This is what this is for. Let me know where you are. Let me know how long you've been following me. Let me know what you're interested in regards to this program, if that's why you're here. And what else do I want to say? We're at only a few more days. So today is Friday, as I say this. It is Friday, the 5th of March. And tomorrow is Saturday. The following day is Sunday. Sunday, March 7th, is the final day to register to become a member of SmartBody SmartMind in 2021. This is my 12-week online group experience program. It is educational, it is practical, there is live support. It is the only time in the year when I am actively engaged teaching online for this period of time, for a 12-week period. This year is our 10th time we have run this program, which is hard to believe. We started back in, I think it was 2015, and we've had people from over 90 countries go through this online group experience. And I'm here to answer your questions around this, your suitability, eligibility, all that kind of stuff. Before I get into the questions, I'm just going to head to the chat. I'm going to set up my browser here so that I can see things properly and see who's here. And I think we're all good. Hello from Estonia, in Belgium. Hey, Carol, starting on Monday. Awesome. Yeah, and if you're here and if you've already signed up for SmartBody SmartMind, let me know. I know that we've got lots of registration coming in, and people are excited, and people are introducing themselves and getting into the pre-game materials. So if you are wanting to just wait till Sunday, and if you know you're coming in and joining, if you can join now, you'll have the weekend to get through some of the we call it the pre-game content, some videos, also orientation videos that teach you where things are in the course, how the curriculum works. It's just kind of like going to university or college. You don't show up typically on the very first day of class. You show up a week before, you get to know where things are. This is what this following week is for. It's to orient you in nervous system style to everything that is there, get your tech questions answered so that you can interact with our interface. Hey there from the UK, hello from Poland, more UK, hello from Nova Scotia, already signed up, all right, already, hello Boston. I'm excited, but already feel stress. Yes, it's a new venture, right? So it's normal to have a little bit of excitement, a little bit of positive stress when we're entering into something new. I think that lets us know that what we're doing is going to be different. It's going to be changing, and to just know that initial excitement, it slowly dies off, and we actually want that to happen. And actually, someone the other day asked that question. They were worried about their excitement dwindling, you know, that primary rush. We see this at New Year's resolutions time. People are all excited about their new plan, their new routine, their new diet, their new whatever it is. And that adrenaline, that survival energy, it gets them going at the beginning, but it's also very survival based, right? So the need for us to have novelty is important, but it also can be an addiction in some ways, right? So I said to this one person who was interested in SBSM, I said, well, get excited, but then don't get excited. Like, make it really normal. Kind of like every day we need to drink water. We need to, well, I hope you all do. We need to brush our teeth. we need to move a little bit, we need to eat food, basic human needs. We just do them. We rarely get super excited about drinking water and all that, those sorts of things. Think of SmartBody SmartMind like that. It's like drinking water. It's not that we need to get excited and ramped up for doing it. We just have to do it. It's essential, in my opinion, in my professional and personal opinion, it's essential information for us humans living in the current time in humanity. The other thing I'll mention is the nervous system touches everything. So for those of you brand new, bit of education, in SmartBody SmartMind, we're working directly with the body, with the mind, with our intention and attention to target, to go into, to wake up and grow capacity within the whole somatic system. So this is more than just mind body. We're working at the organ level. We're working a little bit with the breath. We're not changing the breath. We're learning how to be with the breath. We're working with the movements of the system. I am a movement teacher by trade. So we get into very gentle, what's called Feldenkraisian awareness through movement lessons that are infused with knowing the basic tenets and principles of nervous system safety. And the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system specifically, it touches everything. Not only does it touch our organs and our immune system and our cardiovascular system, our urinary system, brain, all of it, it allows us to engage with others, right? So right now we've got 33 people on the line and you're engaging with me, albeit through this strange online interface. If I was to start to do funny faces or get really, really slow and really, really boring, and I kind of want to laugh just doing this, that you'll feel that through the screen. That is your autonomic nervous system picking up on those cues, or it's not going to pick up on the cues because I'm getting really, really dull and really, really monotone and homogeneous in my execution. So how we interact and how we pick up cues from people is also part of our autonomic nervous system. And then the other element, so we've got the body, the engagement with others relationally, how we see the environment. I'm just priming this because I've got some questions that have to do with people who were brought up in really unsafe, disorganized, and, for lack of a better word, unpredictable environments. So when we are in an unpredictable environment or an environment that is always unsafe, our autonomic nervous system picks up on that. It knows, even if we're an infant and we're not cognitively aware of what's happening, we feel it viscerally. We feel it in these cells. We feel it in our organs. We especially feel it in our gut and in our immune system, in our cardiovascular system. The outside forces, the outside unpredictability and unsafety, it goes through us and we sense it. And then we react, and then we go into our own survival mechanisms to cope and to manage and to adapt to that which is around us. If you think about sea life in the ocean, if a toxic substance goes into the water, they might not feel it, or they might, but slowly over time, it impacts them, it affects them. Or if it's something really severe, they contract, they might even die, right? Terrible way to start the morning, but that's how it works. When the water around that sea life starts to get unwell and is poisonous and toxic and filled with unsafety, it impacts the organisms within that sea life oceanic environment. We're the same way, right? So the system, the human system, has this nervous system, and when it is tripped off into survival energy, a lot of the time, if not all the time, it's like the water in that body of water. It's going to impact all the systems within our bodies, within our cells, organs, how we relate, how we see the world around us. And then that dictates how well we engage with the world, how well we stay safe or not safe. So I'm going to head into the comments here and then get into some of the questions. Hello from Dumbo, Brooklyn. Hey there. I know exactly where that is. Can this help with depression? 100%. So mental illness, as we call it that, and I don't like that term, it's more than the mentality. It's more than how we think. It is physiological. And for the person asking this question, Lisbeth, you may, and I'm going to make an assumption, chances are when we have got what we would classify as deep analytic depression, this is not depression that we would have if we are upset about something for one day, for example, right? That isn't that. That is kind of this sort of depression of, oh, this feels really terrible. I feel, oh, I can't really do anything today. But then the next day we're fine. We process it, versus a biological depression that is through the whole system. Typically, when someone is living in a state of what we would call analytic depression, very, very, very all-encompassing, it is not just in the mind, it is in the physiology. So usually folks who fall into that category have digestive problems, immune system related problems, low energy, chronic pain, trouble with regulating their cardiovascular system, right? This would be heart rate that goes through the roof, but then really cold body parts, being able to not get the flow going in the body, not being able to engage and be excited about life. So that is typically how we see depression, is this lack of vigor, lack of, just vitality, but it's the whole biology. And what we know is that when we've had early adversity, when we've had chronic stress, it impacts that autonomic nervous system that I was just talking about, the parts that govern those fight, flight, freeze elements. It impacts our cellular systems, but it also impacts how we process the world. If we take it further back to when we were really, really young, if we didn't have caregivers, parents, usually our mother, who herself wasn't filled with good life force energy and vitality and regulation and just powerhouse of goodness, if we had the opposite of that raising us, and this is what you'll learn in SmartBody SmartMind and go into depth with at the practical and educational level, if we have a caregiver who is already depressed and living in their survival physiology and they are not aware of it, it immediately transfers to us. Not because they're trying to make us unwell, it's just because we learn as immature human animals when we're infants based on what is around us. We model it. It's like if you grow up in a household and everybody's speaking French, you learn French. You're not going to just learn English because your culture is maybe from English-speaking land, right? You will learn what is around you. Hope that analogy makes sense. So depending on where a child is raised or how they are raised, they will be raised based on what they hear, what they see, and what they feel, right? And that's why we have to connect with the somatic system. So I hope that answers the question around depression. Into that, we could fall into severe anxiety, panic attacks, and other forms of what we would call psychiatric illness. Now, there are some instances where things we could say are genetic, and as we know through the field of epigenetics, the genetic imprint, if you will, our DNA expresses based on the environment that we are exposed to, the stressors or the non-stressors. So someone might have a genetic imprint for something like depression, for example, but they may not end up having the symptomology and the characteristics because their environment was super nurturing, healthy, safe, filled with life force energy and vitality. And so that genetic expression didn't get turned on. And so this is what we're learning right now in the new forms of neuroscience and genetics, and epigenetics is the field, is that we can really create our reality, but we have to create it ourselves. We have to work with ourselves. And then someone said, and stress, 100%. So again, how regulated we are in our physiology. And this is so hard to understand, guys and gals. The way that we've been taught in the classic medical allopathic world still to this day is not holistic. I know many of you see the world that way in your health, but even in alternative therapies and mind-body practices and energetic practices and the practices that are becoming more mainstream, they once were more fringe. They were once called more woo-woo, right? that's kind of, that term is getting wiped out because people are just accepting these things. But at the same level, this 180-degree shift towards seeing that our biology drives our behavior, it also drives our brain. Our stress physiology drives how our brain works. The brain is an end organ, just like the gut, just like the cardiovascular system, just like the hormones that secrete from the glands in our body. The biology, the autonomic nervous system biology, physiology, neurophysiology, whatever you want to call it, when it is on high alert and it doesn't know how to self-regulate, it's like a runaway train. Essentially, it will harm all of the parts within the system and also the interactions with others and interactions with the world. This is why a lot of folks who are stuck in survival stress end up getting into accidents over and over again. Why they literally walk down those dark alleys and get into trouble. I say that metaphorically, but literally, because their spidey senses are either turned off or they're on such hyper alert that they are not accurate in assessing what is around them. This is called our neuroception. All right. Hey, Amy, thanks for your question. Already in SBSM, wonderful. Curious how you deal with in utero trauma, emergency, and premature birth trauma. So if I were to work with someone one-on-one, it would be slightly different. But in SBSM, all of us, whether someone's coming in wanting to work with their mental health, their physical health, their relational health, their movement capacity, their ability to use their brain better, or in utero trauma, emergency, near-death experience trauma, we go through the same curriculum. And so we don't necessarily deal with it. We're working at building capacity within the entire physiological human system and how it relates to the environment. And that building of capacity throughout the modules, throughout the labs of SBSM, it builds and builds your faculties to be able to essentially track and sense somatically these early pre-verbal somatic senses of unsafety, fear, terror, confusion, pain, fright, like all these things that if we were born prematurely or we had to have surgeries when we were like 1 day old, think about that. If a little infant is going into an ER or an OR, an operating room, and they're being poked and prodded and needles are going into them and they're going under anesthesia and all these things that are super stressful on a big person, even more so on a little human that is still not fully developed, their system is going into constant shock state in a way. They're being kept alive, but it's like this insult to the system. And so they come out of that, even if they come out of that with a healthy, nurturing parental environment, their system has been taxed, right? They've been in some ways put into a washing machine of a lot of stress. The organs in the system, the viscera, the immune system, the autonomic nervous system, all of it is what felt that shock, that terror, that we would call adversity, that stress, that trauma. And so in SBSM, the way we work with it is when we get into the deeper labs, so like week 5, 6, we're starting to work with the stress organs. So for those of you who are new here, SmartBody SmartMind isn't just mindfulness. It isn't yoga poses. It isn't breathing techniques. We're working directly with the stress physiology, the kidney adrenals. The adrenals pump out some of our main stress chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol being the two that most people know about. We're working with the connection between the gut and the brain and the brain and the gut, because there's a massive highway between the gut to the brain. We're working with what's called the mediastinum, which is technically the area that holds and hammocks the heart. So there's a lot of fascia, a lot of good stuff. I mean, there's good stuff everywhere in here, but the heart clearly is what goes into fight, flight, or freeze when there's a lot of stress. And the fascia, the tissues, the sheaths around that heart space and our breathing apparatus, which is very close to it, when we are going into terror, shock, I'm going to die, nothing is safe here. All of these physiological structures, what do you think's happening with them? They're getting prepared to fight. They're getting prepared to be in war. They're armoring themselves. And then when they realize, and this is just a hypothetical, but this is the typical way that the stress physiology works, when it realizes it can't fight anymore, what does it do? It puts the white flag up and it collapses. It goes into what we would call a freeze dorsal, high tone dorsal state. Everything's like, I give up, I can't fight anymore. And then poof, everything goes limp, literally, physically, metaphorically. So we work with in utero emergency birth traumas by going into the system, building up capacity, working with these areas. We don't work because of the group format. I am not asking you all to name and list when was the first time this happened, or when did you have that trauma or this trauma. I give you guys the reins. We're all mature adults. We guide you through in a titrated way to say we build and build and build. When these memories, when these feelings come up, we need to be with them, feel them, use our resources, be it external or internal, and use the skills that you've learned to process and ride those waves of somatic sensation that might come up, the memories that might come up, the movements that might come up that want to integrate and release, the emotions that might come up, so many things. And the reason why we do it that way is the human system is so complex. We really don't ever know what might come up. And this is why we fall into a bit of a trap when we have folks say, oh, well, jaw pain must be that, or digestive problems must mean that you're not speaking your mind, or whatever it is, right? I think some of those things have utility, but we're just way more complex than these texts and books that have said, well, this happens, that means this. Some things are literal, right? If I have a cut on my hand and it's bleeding, I'm bleeding because I have a cut in my hand. But sometimes if I'm feeling tears, it doesn't mean that it's because I'm sad. It could be I'm hiding my anger, or my tears are coming out because I feel joy, right? And so this is where we have to be very discerning with the human system. Okay, I'm going to get into some of the questions that were submitted beforehand. And if you're joining in here a little late, this is being recorded. You can come back and press play after the fact. Let me just have a little sip of my coffee. I hope the sound is working. Someone says they've lost their sound. Maybe refresh. If you're not hearing me, you won't be able to hear me say that. Right. If you haven't done the 3-part video training, Healing Trauma, they are free for all. So my helper, Crystal, hello, everyone say hello to Crystal. Say hi, Crystal. She is here offering up links. And so know too that everything is on my website. I have a website, irenelyon.com, just my name.com. On there, all of my free resources, all of my programs, my bio, my credentials, my blog, everything. But the Healing Trauma training, 3 parts, very, very comprehensive. I've even got the handouts here. There are 3 handouts that go with one handout with each video. This is a very comprehensive training. It isn't just a 1-sheet 10-minute video. These are long videos. It explains a lot of what I'm talking about here at a base level. So please get into those if you haven't already. Okay, I'm going to get into a question that came in for me. Okay. So I'm just going to read the whole because it's a good story from someone who submitted this. So they say, it is starting to become so clear to me the more I listen to my live streams that the uncertainty and chaos I experienced in childhood, which was my dad's alcoholism, workaholism, and frequent arguments between my parents, are the root cause of my obsessive thoughts, OCD, so obsessive compulsive behavior like tendencies and anxieties. And I'm starting to put the pieces together and understand my emotional, neurological, and dysregulated wiring. I've also just this morning after taking notes on some other videos I did on OCD, that my disorganized attachment tendencies and dysregulation are due to extremely confusing and unpredictable love chaos during my childhood. And it's also the way money shows up in my life and in my relationships with money. So I'm going to pause and just unpack this first paragraph. So one of the things that we don't often realize, because a lot of people, and there'll probably be a third of you here, if not more, who don't think that they have some form of traumatic stress stored in the body. And I'm here to say that pretty much every human being living in our industrialized, domesticated way of life, for the most part, we have some form of stored traumatic stress. But we don't have to have lived through a war, a severe assault, a car accident, and abusive parents where we know that we were abused physically, sexually, verbally. If the parents hate each other, if the parents don't know how to communicate, if the parents give us two different stories, if one of the parent is, as you've written here, living with alcoholism, workaholism, is not focused, doesn't know how to attune to us, and then you throw in that mix of the two of them not knowing how to communicate, that is a perfect storm. It's a situation that will, remember what I said a little while ago about what we're exposed to? That is darn confusing for a little human that is immature emotionally and is looking and craving and is thirsty for connection, consistency, unconditional love, and boundaries. And when we don't get that, depending on the situation, the way we attach to them becomes faulty. And there's a whole slew of attachment theory. There's secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant, anxious, disorganized attachment. That is not really important here because this person realizes that the way that they live now. So then the next question is, do you think my chaotic childhood and internal dysregulation is mirrored in my relationship with money and how it shows up in my life? Because it's always been a tumultuous relationship. There's abundance and it's easy, and then suddenly it disappears and it's absent. So think about that. So yes, the answer is yes. These primary wirings, they form how we see, not just and feel our body. Remember I said at the beginning how we interact with others and how we interact with the world. And right now in our world, we have to pay money for things, right? SmartBody SmartMind costs money. The food that I put in my mouth, we have to pay for it. The electricity is paid for through our pockets, right? Money is just part of our life. We can consider it negative, positive, but it's just the way it is. It's neutral. And so if we had a chaotic interaction with our primary relationships, i.e. our parents, where one day it's loving and great, and then the next day they take away the love because they're having a bad day, that teaches us this stop-start. It teaches us a lack of flow. It teaches us, ooh, there's tons of abundance today, but tomorrow it's all gone. And so if that's wired in us, and that's how we know to live in the world, we keep playing that story out. We keep repeating the same pattern until we get the realization and we have kind of that higher level of awareness, self-awareness that says, wait a second, I'm stuck in the matrix here. Literally, I'm repeating the same thing. This is not me. This is that situation that I am replaying over and over again. So yes, is the answer to that. And so is the answer to the relationships. Again, if all we saw was two parents in that way, or one parent, it doesn't even have to be two. It could be one parent and how they relate to themselves and how they relate to their internal physiology, how they care for themselves. We learn that way. Some instances, sometimes kids break out of that bind. I've seen very old souls who get into family systems and they know immediately, you guys are all crazy, right? Who here has grown up that way, right? And literally the child becomes the black sheep. They defy in a healthy way the crap that they see, and it makes it struggles. It's a struggle for them because humans want connection. So when a child can actively disconnect from that, but stay engaged in their own world and have their own friends, maybe they hang out at a friend's house after school because that family is safer. That is how a child can escape that kind of tumultuous upbringing. And sometimes, like I said, the human is a little bit more on it, and they're like, something's not right here. I got to get out of here. And some do run away. We know this. Some are, it's just the way it is. Anyway, back to this question. Would SBSM help me with rewiring what I'm referred to? I've done previous cognitive work on shifting beliefs in classic psychotherapy, energy healing with a focus on my lower chakras. It only gave inconsistent results. So how can SBSM help? So the thing to understand is SBSM is not like classical therapy. It is not energy work. We work with the energy within our physiology. We work with what we consider the lower chakras, but it's through the pelvis, it's through the diaphragms, it's through the organ systems. So it isn't psychotherapy. It's not energy healing. It's a much more robust, all-encompassing program that works at those deep levels that were wired into us in that specific scenario I just said. So yes, this is how it's different. I have seen and heard stories of people shifting their relationship with money drastically through SBSM. We actually had, I think it was Fiona Crystal. I did a long form interview with one of my students, and even Janet Raftis Crystal. For those of you that want to go and watch some of our students and them talk about money, Janet talked about how her relationship with money changed and she stopped overworking herself in her practice. I think it was from a year or two ago. But these stories keep coming up. People find new jobs, people leave jobs, people fall in love. I've had more than 2 people tell me that they've met the love of their lives while doing this program or shortly after it, because we're becoming more secure, more grounded, and more vital in what we want. And until we know what we want, it's very hard to know how to find it. And often we don't know what we want when we're swimming in our survival stress, because all we know when we're in survival stress is danger, 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 danger. I better protect myself. No one is safe. I have to be alone forever, right? That's kind of a script that we hear of when people have extricated themselves out of really intense family situations. I've met many women, and I'm sure some of you are here, who have chosen to not have children, and that's fine, 100% fine, but they will not bring another child into the world because their upbringing was so tumultuous. And I don't think we've taught people enough, we are now, that it doesn't have to be the way it was when you grew up, right? I think the next generation of folks who are gonna bring little humans into this world are learning that they can change their patterns so that it's a different way, that it isn't the disaster that they were brought up in. But those who have chosen not to, there is an intelligence there that knows, I don't know what I need to know to make my kids or my potential future kids safe and happy, so I'm just going to not go there. And so there's utility in that as well. There's an intelligence in that as well. Okay, so I hope that answers this question. Next one is from Elise. Okay, so you write, let me have a little more tea here. You speak about memories that can come up and how we can ride the wave of intensity so it can settle and integrate feelings, sensations, and memories. So yes, I just talked about that in my introduction about how, when the question was asked, how do we work with in utero, if you guys remember, in utero trauma, birth trauma, emergency trauma, SBSM is working to build capacity and foundation through the whole system, how we interact with ourselves, so that when feelings, sensations come up, we're better equipped. We have more resource. We have more ability to keep our higher brain online to help us know what to do. So this is pretty much part and parcel of the whole program. We're working towards this capacity building. So yes, so you say, I'm not aware of the trigger, no memories or sensations that need to integrate and settle. So this is also very common, everyone here. If we had that early upbringing where we don't remember seeing something, we don't remember things being done to us, but we know we're never safe, we never feel safe, or if we try to sense safety, it takes us, like, here's the thing. If I were to say to everyone here, tell me a time when you felt really safe, like really just safe, solid. If we have to think for more than a split second when we last felt safe, then chances are our system is not cellularly safe. It's kind of a binary thing. We either sense it and we know it, it's like, yep, I'm safe, or what do you mean? What does that feel like? That's a sign of developmental early trauma, where things were chaotic, things were unpredictable, and things were not safe, basically. And so our cells feel that. So I say that, it takes me a long time to get through a question, I know, but there's a lot of context here, so bear with me. This is why we might not be aware of the memories, because the memories either weren't formed because cognitively our brain wasn't online when we were age 0 to 3 years old. Pre-verbal trauma is what we call it, but we can tell something isn't right. And as we become more mature in how we connect with our bodies, as we develop something called a healthier sense of our interoception inside, we start to feel sensations, emotions, and maybe somatic memories or maybe cognitive memories even start to flood back. What people often are afraid of, and what has happened traditionally in the past with classic therapy, sorry, classical therapists, but this is kind of what I've seen, is there's no building up, there's no foundation building within the physiology. And so you're doing the more psychotherapeutic work, and a memory might get, dug up from the grave, and it's packed with survival energy, emotion, the pain of that trauma. And if we've done nothing to build the capacity to know how to, like, imagine if I was to throw you something that was big and heavy and you didn't have the muscular strength to know how to ground yourself, contract your core, and whoop, and you don't know what your strength is, you might grab it and crumble, or you might get so afraid and you freeze and it hits you in the face, or you might fall over because you just don't want it, right? So that's kind of a very gross analogy for when these memories come up. People often will say, I was so triggered, I got re-traumatized. I'm never doing that again because it was terrible. And you're right, it was terrible. It's like me throwing you a boulder and you're not ready physically, mentally to catch it, right? You don't have the proper gloves, the proper shoes, all those sorts of things. And so we need to build that capacity so that when the memories do come through, because we actually want them to come through, sure, we'll feel the intensity, sure, we'll feel the fear, we might feel the terror, we might feel the horror, we might see the gruesome, bloody details that we blocked out of our memory, but we've built the capacity, everyone, to be like, oh yeah, I got that rock. Come on, I got my gloves, I got my shoes, I got my steel-toed boots, I've been weight training, I'm breathing, I'm here, give it to me, right? Let me have that big boulder. I can handle it because I've done the work to be able to deal with it and toss it or get out of the way, right? So another analogy there. So to go back to this, you speak to this by saying, if we're not prepared to feel, we will go into shutdown or hyperarousal and activation. So yeah, this is what often occurs. I mean, I'm being very general here, but if we don't, just as my example with me throwing you guys the boulder, or being in a therapeutic situation where we're just trying to dig up old stuff, if we don't have it's not just cognition, if we don't have the neurochemical wiring built back up in us to handle the excretion of stress chemicals, our body going into an old bracing pattern, we might not even know it's happening. And before we know it, we're like ready to pass out, or before we know it, we're in a panic attack, or before we know it, we have a massive symptom come up. And I'm staging this because of your question, and I'm almost to the end of it. So this is your concern about doing SBSM. So it's a valid concern. And everyone that goes through SBSM is an adult. We tell you, we structure the course to go slow, to go at your own pace. We do not give you all 10 modules at the outset and say, go at it, have at it. We titrate the program throughout the 12 weeks. And we say, and I will say over and over again, and a lot of times new members don't believe me. So believe me when I say, if you start to do a lesson, the first 5 minutes and all of a sudden you feel your heart rate pounding, that is your cue to pause that lesson, close the computer down, close the app down, walk away and feel that heart, ground yourself, resource yourself. The first lesson we do on day 1 is researching your resources. What are the resources? You feel your heart pounding, oh my God, I need a cup of tea. I need to feel the warmth, or I need to go into the bath, or I need to go outside and feel the air, or I need to call my best friend, or I need to go look at fuzzy puppy videos on the internet. It doesn't matter, right? What is it that is a positive resource? The moment you feel that spike in survival stress, that is when we go, okay, feel that. Do what you have to do to stay present, stay in the environment. And by doing that, you process that little blip of survival physiology. This is what somatic experiencing, one of the things that I'm trained in, the work of Peter Levine, is all about, processing these little drops in titrated ways, little drops of survival physiology and all that comes with it, but not so much that it floods our system and we overwhelm or we completely shut down. That takes a tremendous amount of mature, observational, this is what Irene said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to step away, as opposed to, oh, if I don't get this lesson done, I am going to hate myself. I'm going to go through a massive amount of shame. Our old ways of learning in the school system will also bubble up here. Feelings of, I'm not good at this, I'm broken, I can't do this. All I can do is 5 minutes and that's it. Oh my God, I might as well just give up now. So if we go in with that mentality, yes, there's going to be a struggle with the material. I'm being really honest here, guys and gals. But if you can really listen to these little moments of medicine, because that is medicine, when someone can feel that little triggering of survival energy and pause and resource and process it and let it go, that's medicine. That's what becoming your own medicine is all about. But if we feel it and we just ignore it, it's like, no, this isn't big enough. This isn't big enough. I'm waiting for that big blowout. Then we come into trouble. And this is why at the beginning of our program, we're working on learning how to follow impulses. When you have to go to the bathroom, can you listen? If we can't listen to when we need to have a glass of water, rest, go to the bathroom, if we hold in our gas that we pass through our digestive system, if we're ashamed to sneeze, cough, all these things, we have to work on that first, because those body physiological, biological, physiological responses are part of our autonomic nervous system physiology, right? And so that is how we train ourselves to listen. So your concerns are valid, Elise. And you said the last thing I want in SBSM is to trigger a grand mal. So you haven't mentioned here if you're epileptic, if you've been diagnosed with that. So if someone knows that seizures, petit mal, grand mal, those sorts of seizures are in your history, then you've got to be even more titrated, right? If someone hasn't, and again, I'm making a very sweeping generalization here, guys. If someone has never had an epileptic episode, if they know that their brain doesn't go that way, I don't want to say that will never happen, but chances are that probably won't happen. So my assumption is that you have been diagnosed with epilepsy and that's why you're worried. So it is a concern. It's a valid concern. And I also know, having worked with people who have been diagnosed with various types of seizure representations, We treat them as a syndrome, as a symptom to something going on in the body that is chaotic, and then the system breaks. It's the same with someone that has, say, a migraine, severe migraine headaches, severe autoimmune flares, right? Skin outbreaks, psychotic outbreaks, where there's so much going on, but the person isn't registering that the stress is just adding and adding. They're not registering that they're not listening to the fact that they need to eat, or that they're dehydrated, or that they're tired, and they're pushing and pushing and pushing. And then the system, to quote Gabor Mate, who wrote the book When the Body Says No, the body literally says, heck no, stop. And then it gives us an illness, a migraine. It passes us out, a fibromyalgia flare, a seizure, anything to stop us in our tracks so that we listen and feel. So your concerns are valid, and by going through the work in the way that we really have addressed, and we really urge you to, this stuff can be mitigated. And if not, we completely change the path and go down a different road, different highway. Okay, I'm going to get into the comments here for a moment. Let's see here. Let me just go up. Hello from Indonesia. Hey, Carol. Yeah. I feel the anxiety comes since I've tried so many different therapies and approaches for over a decade, and part of me feels like this is my last chance at getting some normality in my system. So this is a very common story we hear from our students. We just released a beautiful 9-minute video clip on my YouTube channel here. We can link it below, where we have a handful of our students, female students, talking about exactly what you've said, that they really had tried everything and this was it, and it did help. And of course, knowing them and having gotten to know these people through my interview process and just seeing them in the work, they have really treated this like a study, meaning they've gone into SmartBody SmartMind not looking for a quick fix, but they are looking to heal and become apprentices of their entire body. So it's like they're becoming masters of their system. It's like, think of SmartBody SmartMind. It's like the first university session for the rest of your life of learning how to be with yourself and heal and learn about yourself. We just are not taught this when we're little, right? Someone asks, please talk about aggression. What would you like to know? Give me a specific, because I could talk about aggression for 5 hours, and I have lots of videos. I have hours and hours of question and answers, articles on healthy aggression and anger. So let me know. Does working with SBSM mean we forget about the evil people who have hurt us? You hear everywhere, one needs to forgive to move on, but I don't feel in my core I can ever fully forgive. No. So if we were to forget, we would have brain damage, being really blunt there, right? We don't want to forget anything. We want to learn how to be with our past memories such that they don't trigger us and send us into more re-traumatization. Forgiveness, in my opinion, is overrated in many ways. Now, accepting what happened, making peace with what happened, and of course, there's so many different situations here, but knowing that most people, from my experience, we're not born wanting to harm and hurt. We are put into situations that put us into situations where we harm others, where we hurt others, where we are perpetrators towards other people. But if someone has been brutally attacked or whatever it might be, forgiveness, in my opinion, is not the answer. We can, and I know depending on different people's beliefs, religious beliefs, there might need to be forgiveness. But here's the thing, and this goes well with that aggression comment. If we were attacked when we were young, let's just say, and violated sexually, which is so common for so many humans, Our fight flight mechanisms, if they could have turned on and protected us, they would have. We also will feel an absolute disgust for what occurred to us. And this is why toxic shame and depression and chronic illness and just this sense of there's no point is so common in people who have been attacked and abused. The system has been put into a shutdown response. Part of healing is getting the healthy fight back. Actually, maybe, and we get to this in SBSM, we work with healthy aggression, and we work at getting that vitality back, is even visualizing harming that person, not in real life, but energetically getting that fight out, getting what we would call annihilation energy out, getting our sadism out, the desire to want to kill and hurt and maim those who hurt us or those who might have hurt our children or whatever. This doesn't mean, though, that we are evil people. We are moving the biology out so that it's not trapped inside, while also holding at the same time this knowing that we're not doing this to harm physically. We're working to work with ourselves so that we cannot be trapped in this cycle, right? So yeah, forgiveness is a tricky one. I think that it's a little, it's outdated. Let's just say that. It's outdated in my opinion. Okay, I'm gonna get back to a question that was submitted via email from Dawn. And Dawn, thank you for your email. I know there's a lot more detail. I don't want to read out the whole detail, but it's great that you found the work and you have a question about eating disorders. So you say, I'm thinking of signing up for the course SBSM. And do you have much experience of using this work with eating disorders, or have others trained with you who do? It's a specialized field. I know and traditionally have known one of the most complex and difficult to have success in. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. So yeah, it is a very, eating disorders are really complex. I don't want to say tricky. The few people that I've worked with in private practice, and bear in mind, we have had hundreds of people that have gone through SmartBody SmartMind since 2015. So I don't know every single history. I mean, I wish I could, but not everybody shares their successes, their histories. I do know that people's relationships with food and how they care for themselves and how they listen to their physiology completely changes when they go through the program. When I've worked with people in private practice who have had eating disorder troubles and struggles, it's very, very much rooted in what I was talking about a second ago around disorganized, unpredictable, unsafe, chaotic, abusive environments growing up. I mean, it's just what I've seen. And I think most people who work at this level would probably agree with me that that's what they've seen. So if we just take this back, they are very complex, but I want to try to find a way to demonstrate they're complex, but in a real simple way. So eating food is a necessity for life, right? Autonomically, we know when we're hungry and we should eat when we're hungry. And then when we're full and we're satiated, we stop. When we're young, and there's so many situations here, because humans have gone into this weird way of this is one way to raise a human, this is a way, this is a different way. Oh, we're going to have this kind of parenting, this kind of parenting, that kind of parenting. If you go into the wild and a bunch of baby bears, cubs are born, the mother bear treats those cubs the same way she would if she was a bear in Canada, a bear in the United States, a bear in Russia, wherever, right? It's the same. Birth the baby, keep the baby or the cub warm, lick them, nurture them, keep predators away, let them nurse. And then when they get old enough, we teach them how to hunt, to feed, to forage, whatever kind of bear it is. If that little baby cub is nursing, the mama bear isn't saying, okay, you've had enough today, little one. That's enough. I'm going to walk away and not feed you anymore. right? She literally, if you've ever watched a cat or an animal allow their babies to nurse, they're just there, like, come have me, like, eat as much as you want, and when you're done, you're done. The way that we have enforced food rules and trained eating regimens, and there's nothing wrong with having to feed a baby by a bottle if we need to, but the idea of, well, the baby has to have the whole bottle. Well, why? They've stopped eating, so don't keep forcing that thing in their mouth. There's so many ways at the outset in which we mess up the natural signalings of hunger cues with our human infants. So that's one thing. Then we get to older years where kids are learning how to eat solids. I'm of the camp, and I've studied applied human nutrition, so I've got a lot of these stories from my professors where foods are meant to be eaten just in diversity, right? Like all these different foods, vegetables, proteins, grains, whatever, all the nutrients. And if we just allow little ones to eat the way we eat as humans, and granted, of course, we're eating healthy, right? They just start to eat those things. But we have transferred into this fear of food. Well, let's give it to the little one to see if they are allergic to it. Let's give it to them and see if they react. So there's already, with how for many of us, I'm being very general here, guys, there's this fear of this food is going to harm me. We better wait and see if the kid dies when we give them bananas or whatever it is. So that's another thing. I'm kind of staging this. And then let's say little one is now sitting at the dinner table, and then there's all this stress. You better eat that or else. Your sister is eating this and you're not, so you must be terrible, right? All these things, rules, rewards, conditions, stress. That's enough to make a little person want to stop eating or control what they eat. And so I'll never forget a story that one of my nutrition professors taught to us around the age when usually teenagers, and typically girls, I don't know why, I'm sure there's psychology papers around that, they will start to change their eating behaviors, not because they're trying to be healthy, but because it's the only thing they can control. I'm not eating that chicken, Mom. I'm a vegetarian now. What? You ate chicken the other day. Well, I'm not eating it today. I've decided not to eat it anymore. And yet then kiddo goes out to McDonald's and has chicken McNuggets or Big Mac, right? It isn't about necessarily the food, and I don't want that because it's not healthy for me, but I am going to exert the one thing I can control, because at that preteen age, that teenage year age, a mother, a father can't force feed us. I mean, there'll probably be extremes where kids are not force fed, but maybe denied food, and that's a whole other situation of neglect. But at that age, you can't strap a kid down and feed them the way you could when they're an infant, which is another story in itself. So this is a very long thing here. So the child, the teenager usually starts to control what they eat as a way to control the uncertainty around them. Now, then there's different forms of eating disorders. I've met people who will purge and vomit, so classic sort of bulimia, and the eating is a soothing mechanism. It's a soothing mechanism because when we eat, we stimulate our rest digest of the parasympathetic nervous system, and that puts us into a calmer state, right? It slows us down. And so if there's tumultuous unsafety and fighting and chaos in our world, but we know if we can hide food and hoard food and have food all around us in our bedroom, this is just one example, and then we can eat it, it helps us calm. It gives us a spike of hormones. It can relax us. It might put us to sleep, all these things. And so that pattern then of eating to soothe as opposed to eating for sustenance and hunger, it gets mixed up. The other thing, if we think of then extreme, so folks who are living with, say, anorexia, again, this is not my specialty, but I know a little bit about it, to know that for someone to stop eating, which is a autonomic drive, right? the feeling of eating, the hunger. To ignore those cues, again, is a very strong form of controlling the system. There's differing degrees here. It's a spectrum. And so what I would say is we have to go back, just like when we're working with, say, addiction, we're going back to what happened, but not so much trying to figure it out, but how is the person not feeling their body? Can they sense their body? Can they feel their body? And I know with eating disorders, there's a lot of dysphoria and inaccuracy in terms of how a person looks. And usually that conditional acceptance gets built in very young based on how well we were raised. Was there if a child is self-regulated and has really solid, safe, secure, attached, attuned upbringing, the likelihood of this happening is very, very, very slim. It could happen later in life. I've heard some instances where folks have had a trauma as a teenager and then they have an eating disorder, but it's more of a post-traumatic stress kind of thing, and then it shifts, it breaks. So that is different than early trauma that kicks a person into the need to control their system and override their autonomic nervous system urges and impulses. So I know you're a coach, Dawn, but understanding how the nervous system and the physiology, the somatic physiology, acts and reacts to uncertainty, danger, unpredictability is super important. To go back to the curriculum of SBSM, working with the stress organs, working with the viscera, working with the brainstem, working with boundaries, working with healthy aggression, right? Think about that child who's hearing their parents screaming and fighting, and they're just eating and eating and eating to soothe. And they're not saying anything when probably in reality, they want to go out and scream at their parents. They might want to kill their parents or tell them to just stop, to get a divorce. Why are you staying together? But they keep it all in, right? There's no ability to express that vigor and that healthy aggression because they're little, they can't. And so we form these boundaries within ourselves to stay safe, but that safety is not safe. It's a dysregulation because there's so much unsafety outside. Let me just see, I had some more notes here. So it is very complex, I agree. And I would really love to know if anyone working with eating disorders has gone this deep to that infant feeding, control, safety place. Maybe that's what you're supposed to do, Dawn. I don't know. But I have seen in working with folks one-on-one this, and it is a tough one to break because it's our sense of security when we're young, right? So I hope that answers a bit of the question. I know that was a long way of answering that, but I wanted to show that this isn't just about what happens when the representation and the behavior pops up. It can be built in from the smallest, tiniest parts when we were really, really young. The other thing I will mention that I've seen a very big trend in with adults who really struggle with their body image, their eating patterns, and all of that. And this is, again, just I'm thinking of like a list of clients I've worked with in the past, is often their parents, usually the mother, has a real poor relationship with her body and the food she eats. And she will put, and again, this is just thinking of clients, they'll put their daughters on diets as young as age 5, as young as age 6, right? And they'll restrict what they eat. They'll only let them have healthy food, nothing that would be considered, a little more sinful. I hate that word, but like a treat. And again, I've seen clients where that's backfired. They have been almost to the point of dogma, a religion control, nothing but healthy food. And that child wants to experience a little bit of life, right? I want to eat some cake. I want to have some chocolate. I want to have something fried in fat, I'm not saying that we should eat that all the time, but I have seen a trend when it's been nothing but that very overly addictive, compulsive health kick. The kids, they don't do well with that, because then they break out of the family system, and what happens? I've seen this. They go to college and then they eat just crap because they're sick of just all the healthy stuff. Whereas if you give a little bit of everything at the beginning, it forms a real healthy relationship with food. And then that element of, oh, you get to have a treat when you get a good grade. That is danger zone for humans, right? We don't want to reward ourselves with those sorts of things, because then it sets up this tone that whenever something good happens, I have to treat myself with something. Anyway, I could go on a tangent off of that, but I won't. I hope that's been useful for folks. So as you can see, there's a broad range of categories here that we can cover with SBSM, because it isn't just about necessarily mental, physical, it's the whole system and how we interact with the world. Okay, have a little bit to... I don't really quite understand your question, Kathleen, but I'll read it out. I work with a lot of clients eliminating or cutting down on alcohol. Can I translate some of the exercises to work with them online? So SmartBody SmartMind is for you. It is designed for your practice, your self-regulation, learning about your physiology. Now, because humans are creative, and I've seen this with my students, if you have a coaching practice or a bodywork practice, you will, I hope, naturally find ways to teach them what you're learning. You can't take my lessons and play them or give them to them or copy and paste the program material. That is technically against the law and infringes on my copyright, right, and my IP. So that is a no-no, a big no-no. But if you find that you're working with someone and you're like, what's it like to just feel your, your feet on the ground, or can you notice what's happening in your belly? These are just things that we would ask a child, or a person, a passerby, if we're trying to help them calm down. So you translate in the way that it is for you. It's like, it's a classic thing I hope all learned in school. Read the book and write an essay about what you learned. Don't read the book and plagiarize the book onto a piece of paper. So you are going to do the work for you, and that is the best way, because then you will integrate it into your own system in the way that you have your own spark of creativity to work with your people, and then it'll come out more organically. Is there a specific part of the body that corresponds to a certain emotion? Is it the same for everyone? No, I have not found that to be true. The body, the viscera, holds our sensations. We learn how to sense what's happening in the viscera. We then interpret emotions with our brain. But like I said a moment ago, just because someone has tightness in their chest, that doesn't necessarily mean that that is sadness. It could be the holding back of joy, right? Just because someone has butterflies in their stomach doesn't mean they're afraid. It could be that they're feeling the bubbling up of anger, right? So no, I don't love those labels. I just think that it's a little too oversimplistic. Life force energy is our vitality. It's our boundaries. It's our ability to act and move forward. It comes from the concept of healthy aggression. Aggression, the Latin is aggredi, which means to push forward, to move forward. So healthy life force energy is just being sovereign, being who we are, and knowing our boundaries, but also having our energy, our creativity be at basically our fingertips. Okay, just looking through your questions, you guys. Someone says, how does SBSM support students who become overwhelmed by what they discover through the program? That's my anxiety. So the person that asked this, I've already answered that. If you guys can remember, that's what building capacity is about. That's why we have a very titrated, structured curriculum. We don't just give you everything all at once. And the question that I answered from Elise, who was worried about grand mal seizures, that's that answer right there. Is you have to be adult. We need to be mature. Even though we're working maybe on an immature, dysregulated nervous system, we still have our higher brain. If you guys are showing up here, you can own a computer, you can be here, you can interact, you can type. You have a level of cognitive faculty that knows right from wrong, that can stop yourself, that can show up to this thing live. That means you have the ability to sense, okay, I think I need to stop. Yep, I gotta stop, pause. If we can have that and we can follow the curriculum the way we've laid out, and you ask questions and you get support within our forums, then that's what we want you to do. So often the worry of overwhelm and the anxiety can sometimes be an old pattern. We just have this assumption that everything is going to be terrible, right? Everything is always going to be anxiety producing, because probably it always has been. Right. And so this is a psyche mindset thing that we also have to catch ourselves in, because there will be people who will go through SBSM, I'm going to be really honest, and their psyche will overpower their biology. They'll feel something good bubbling up and they'll immediately find a way to not sense it because their system is trying to keep them stuck in the past wiring. Now, this doesn't mean we're always going to be perfect. We're going to have moments where we screw up, excuse me, and that's fine. But we have to acknowledge the mistakes. We have to learn from them. And we might feel a little bit of healthy shame. It's like, damn it, I can't believe I just did that. Okay, let's try it again. And next time I'm going to stop before I even think I have to stop, right? That's another thing, is stop before you even think you have to stop. And that's like a bit of a safeguard. So Alicia says, how does it help all forms of anxiety? I have many. My throat closes up when I try to sing because of social anxiety and my neighbors. My brain finds things to fear always. I'm in a prison. So I just kind of spoke to that, Alicia. Anxiety is survival stress. It is something within us that is afraid of the environment and afraid of our sensations. It is a dysregulation within those autonomic systems. So yes, this is part of learning how to bring more regulation and safety on board. And that's exactly what we work with directly in SBSM. All right, thanks for answering a few questions, Crystal. Hey, Kay Tom, I'm familiar with German New Medicine, but I don't know specifics. Any suggestions for dealing with grief and loss? So I'm going to frame this in regards to SBSM. So again, it comes down to capacity. It comes down to being able to process what is there. If something is so big and so huge and we don't have the faculties on board to be in our somatic system and it's just all in our head, this is why I think folks who suffer massive loss and are in massive grief stay stuck in a cycle that is never ending, because it's not getting infused and integrated through their physiology, right? So maybe there's deep anger, memories, meanings, sensations coupled with whatever the loss is, and they haven't been processed through the somatic system. They'll keep living on if we're only trying to process them cognitively. Our bodies feel, right? That we need to work at that body. That's why it's called SmartBody SmartMind. We have to work at that level of the body to make it smarter so that our mind can have less of a strain on it. So yeah, that's the grief and loss piece. And we've had people who have had miraculous shifts in their grief. We've had people go through SBSM who have just lost their partners of 50 years. and they're amazed at how when they finally start working with their body, they finally start to dissolve. Doesn't mean that you won't be sad that you've lost something or someone, but the sadness doesn't overwhelm us to the point where we can't live our lives, right? Where we can't live our lives. Okay. All right. Someone says, I'm currently working with an SE practitioner on a weekly basis. Should I reduce the number of sessions to a fortnight once the SBSM course starts? Jean, you can. It's really up to you. You will be amazed at how much there is to work on. So it could be a useful thing to curb those down, but it really is, you got to feel into your gut. There have been many people who have gone through SmartBody SmartMind who are still seeing their therapists, and the therapists, I'm thinking of Haley, actually, if you want to share Haley's story, Crystal. It's an interview we just did with a alum from Australia. And when she was going through SBSM, she was still seeing a therapist, not an SE. Don't think it was an SE practitioner, but even the therapist was like, you look so different. This is amazing, right? And so I was in private practice as an SE practitioner, working with people one-on-one. And the more I think about this, everyone here, I think that there's been more benefit and result from people going through SmartBody SmartMind than all of my private clients put together, not because I wasn't doing good work, but because you can only do so much with someone in an hour once a week. And usually that hour is a bit of, hello, getting your coat off, getting up, saying, small talk, which is all part of the therapeutic process. But when you have this material at home and you're working with it, when you want, when it's convenient for you, you can put on a 20-minute lesson before you go to bed. You can listen to an educational piece when you're having your cup of tea in the morning. There's like this, you're learning a language in a more robust way. I always use that example. Learning how to regulate our system as adults when we didn't have it, it's like learning a second language as an adult. You're not going to learn a second language only doing 1 hour of language study a week. You might get a little bit. You need to have it all the time. You need to have reminders and prompts and notes to keep saying these words and practicing the language. So some therapists are great. They will give their students homework to do, and not all of them have that capacity, and that's fine. And that's why I created SmartBody SmartMind. Is I was like, this is not enough for people to just see me once a week. And some people had been seeing me for 3-4 years. And I've looked at what has occurred in people who have been through SBSM for maybe a year or two. They're completely shifted in their lives and in their ability to take care of themselves, to break out of the victim identification that they've lived with for so long, the chronic illness, the mental illness, the burnout, all of it. So again, it seems really magical and like this crazy cure, but it's not. It takes time and work to get to that. So I would say, Jane, you got to feel into your gut and do what's right. And, maybe you realize that, no, I'd like to see this person once a week, or no, you know what, I think once a month is good. I would say don't make it set in stone now. Wait until you see how things feel. This is the other trouble with kind of that every week I see this person. What if one week you don't need to see them? Or what if one week you need to see them twice, but for 15 minutes, right? So there's this lack of, there's a lack of harmony sometimes when we have this rigid schedule with our practitioners. And sometimes they need to have that because they have a schedule to keep too. And so you just are like, yep, every week at this time. But sometimes we need to break the routine to go to a different level. Okay. Someone is asking about hormonal imbalances. Does this help with hormonal imbalances, including high testosterone and low estrogen, severe PMS due to chemical imbalance? So everyone's different, Marwa. Everyone is different. And so obviously I understand the nervous system. I also understand food. I also understand toxins in the body. I get all of that stuff. But we do know that when the autonomic nervous system is in a dysregulated state, it will throw off all of the systems in the body and the hormonal/endocrine systems. That's one of the systems. We have had students who have gotten off of things like thyroid medication. They've lowered their ability, not lowered, but their diabetic profiles have improved. PMS, migraine headaches, all these things have shifted. Now, everyone's really different, right? So this is where I always say it's good to have a multi-pronged approach. So if you have a physician, if you have a naturopathic doctor, sometimes depending on a person's condition or illness or whatever they're living with, we need to have more than one approach. But if that nervous system, or I should say, is dysregulated, it will dysregulate and throw off the harmony within the entire body system, and the hormones are definitely one of them. Okay. So this is, do I have any videos which address grief integration? I don't have anything specifically, but again, as I've mentioned, we rarely touch on certain emotions in this work. We know there are emotions, right? Anger and disgust being two of the bigger ones that are often not worked with. And when we are able to be with our physiology and work with it and learn from it and listen to it and not predict it, this allows the system to integrate the emotions that come up as they come up. And so, again, I don't have anything specific that's just on grief per se, but it falls into this whole category of sensorial, somatic, physiological health. And the key is not getting stuck in loops of grief or sadness or anger or disgust. We need to be able to bounce from them as we move through them. The same example that I have is a lot of people get caught in, I'm seeing this more and more as people are being led down the path to think that to heal trauma, you have to shake, right? To shake the body. So me just shaking the body, like we could all do this right now, just like loosen up the joints. I've been sitting for an hour and a half, kind of want to shake and move a little bit. That's not what I mean. I mean, when there's these practices that put a person into a tension pattern to shake and they get a reflex going. What I've seen with that, and we could compare that to a lot of the emotional work that sometimes people dive into and they get locked in these emotional loops. I've worked with people who the moment they start to feel their bodies, they just uncontrollably shake because they've been trained to think, I got to release these emotions by shaking. Now, sometimes we might need to shake organically from internally because of a big trauma that we've had. But once that traumatic experience has been integrated, it's done. It doesn't have to keep repeating over and over again. And so I kind of see a lot of emotional work that's been kind of hot and the key way that people work with things in the past. It's starting to lose its steam because we're realizing that humans are more than just a bundle of emotions, and we're more than just a need to shake. We need to know how to navigate all that stuff. And that's essentially what we do in SBSM. So how does your program help with highly sensitive people? So Deidre, there's a great video I did a little while ago on HSP, and someone asked me just this the other day. Basically, we need to be sensitive, but we need to be sensitive in a regulated way. And from all my work and working with many people who would be classified as overly sensitive to the point of it being debilitating, most, if not all of those individuals had some form of early trauma, developmental trauma, exposure. I was one of those, exposure to way too many chemicals in utero, infancy, childhood, and then the system is primed to react. The one thing that we have seen is, let's just say hypothetically, you're growing up in an environment, it's toxic, it's stressful, and you get out of that environment and you're living a good life. You have the career you want, you've got the people around you, all those things, and life is good. And then often that is when symptoms come up because the system is safe. But if a person was growing up in an environment that was constantly danger, and we've been wired to look for danger, and then we're no longer in the danger, a highly sensitive reaction would be, well, I better look for something to get, I'm going to say that again. I better look for something to be afraid of. I better look for something to react to. So this is one way that we've seen folks who have been brought up in real tumultuous upbringings who get out of it and they think they're home free, and then all of a sudden all these sensitivities start to pop up. And it's because the system is primed to look for a threat on the outside. It can also be primed to look for a threat on the inside, right? And this is where a person might have an immune-related response that doesn't make sense, but the system is looking for danger. It's looking for contraction. It's looking for a near-death experience or a survival stress physiology experience. And then this is what we would say is autoimmune. The system attacks itself because it's on this stress cycle and it doesn't know how to get off of it. But definitely watch that video, Deidre. So someone said the aggression comment, aggression towards triggers and flashbacks when being with the abuser who denies the abuse. I feel angry because she acts like nothing happened. Yeah, so again, this comes down to boundaries. This comes down to, do we need to be around those individuals? I mean, sometimes we have to literally divorce ourselves from the situations that harmed us, especially if those abusers, perpetrators have no interest in healing. I did a video on this a little while ago, why it's not really necessarily important to confront the people that harmed you. It can actually harm you more because they haven't done any of the work to work on themselves. And then we try to find retribution, we try to find peace, and then they won't listen. They don't want to understand it. They don't care. So that can make us feel angry and very unheard. Then we need to work on that stuff separately on our own or with a therapist or with something like SmartBody SmartMind. Okay. Someone says, I'm constantly experiencing internal shakes and severe tension. Does that mean that my nervous system is so overwhelmed that I should not face fears and triggers? Please help. I have been bedbound for a week. So yeah, I mean, Emilian is your name. I hope, that you've watched the healing trauma videos. So be sure to do that if you haven't. These internal shakes, these tensions are often signs of stored survival stress, tension patterns, bracing patterns that are stored in our system. Video number 1 of the Healing Trauma series gets into this, the swimming pool and beach ball analogy. If you've watched it, you guys, it's the system saying there is so much stuck in here, and then you're feeling it. And so we need to learn how to reconnect and reestablish a connection with ourselves in a titrated way to start to move these shakes, these tensions out. We have to find the emotion that might be attached to them, which isn't just saying what emotion it is, but feeling it, learning how to feel internally, the biology. And so again, what I've been saying throughout this session today, you guys, is we need to work at this deeper level to get to know how we have stored these past things, these past traumas, so that we can start to defrost them, right? This is what coming out of freeze is, trying to wake up the system so that we're no longer holding all these tension patterns. Sometimes when these things come up, it can take a few weeks, it can take some time, it can take a month, it can take a year for these things to come out. It doesn't mean we're going to stay exactly the way we are for a year, but we need to be prepared, knowing that these old tension patterns are stored in our system and we want to get them out. It's very important to also know, because of some of the research we've seen, specifically the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences study, that when we have stored traumatic stress in our system and it comes out in these patterns, in these headaches, in these severe hormonal imbalances, heart problems, autoimmune, et cetera, the system doesn't get better with time. It will find another way to cope with the stored traumatic stress. And typically it isn't just stored traumatic stress. We feel it in a form of a tension, a symptom, a sign, or a syndrome, which are those classifications of things like fibromyalgia, autoimmune, depression, severe anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Okay. Someone says, do you think there's a link between people who have more severe COVID long-term symptoms and trauma? My sense is yes, just like any bacterial infection or viral infection will be exacerbated by toxins in the body, by stored not only traumatic stress, but a system that is unhealthy, right? So many of us have viruses in our body, right? I was exposed to the chickenpox virus when I was young. A lot of people are exposed to the herpes viruses, people that get cold sores and those sorts of things. The viruses live in us. They form us. They are expressed in the way our system reacts based on the toxicity and the lack of or health, or the lack of health, or the health in our body, right? And so that is my sense. I also know that the respiratory system, if it is bound by a lot of tension and a lot of bracing, and there isn't good flow in the system, we can't move the tissue in the way that allows the waste products to be excreted, right? We can't harmonize the imbalance in there. That's what cancer is, right? Cancer is being produced in our systems all the time. It's whether or not the system knows how to kill those cells as opposed to them continually building and growing. So human health is really interesting. There is a flux always. We're always wanting to find, I hope, harmony and flow. Sometimes we get sick. Sometimes we get sick and we recover. Some people get sick and they don't recover. So we're being exposed to these things all the time, right? We always have. And how a person takes in and reacts depends on their overall health in general. Mindset is also very important, right? If we're in fear, it's gonna stall the system. It's gonna stall the immune system. If you want a really great resource, look up Zach Bush, MD, just Z-A-C-H Bush, B-U-S-H, MD. He's got some great stuff around the immune system and terrain theory and just health in general. He really talks about the gut and the microbiome and how we connect to the environment. He's wonderful if you want more learning around that. Okay. All right. I'm going to start to wrap this up, you guys, because it has been an hour and 41 minutes. And definitely covered a lot. Someone asks, is it possible to just dissociate in my sleep? 100%. 100%. We can sometimes be living in a dissociated state and functional, but not know it. Right, this is what functional freeze is. I did a video on functional freeze a little while ago. We can pop it up. Basically, humans are weird. We're weird. We are so complex and we are so smart, but we're also so malleable to situations. And so we can live a whole life and be completely disconnected from our body and not feel a damn thing and get by okay. But remember I mentioned that ACE study a little while ago, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. How many people do we know who have just died of pure old age, right? Like they're fully healthy, hiking, eating well, digestion's good, they've never been on a pill in their life, and then they just pass. It rarely happens. That's my desire for the end of my life, is that I just go with no disease, no troubles, no mental decline. But this is how we've seen, this is how we think it should be. I don't think it should be that way. I think that we have the capacity to have full connection to ourselves. But interestingly enough, because of our higher brain and just the world that we live in, we kind of can keep going and keep going, even though we're not fully vital and fully vibrant. Most people, I don't think, on this planet, at least living in the Western world, have experienced that. I think we're at a really interesting tipping point right now where we could, if we choose to, go down that path. That's why I love Zach Bush's work so much, is we're looking at a situation where if we don't shift the way that we've been disconnected to ourselves, which disconnects us from nature, which makes us not take care of nature very well, because we're nature. If we don't shift that soon, we're in for some trouble. We're already in trouble right now, but we need to really work at this individual level so that we wake up that potential and that goodness that's within us. Okay. All right, I'm going to end it here, you guys. Thank you so much. Just a quick reminder to everybody here and everybody watching, depending on when you watch this. We only run SmartBody SmartMind once a year. That's for real. I'm telling the truth. We will not open up registration for you guys until next year, this time. A lot can happen in a year, right? A lot of healing can happen. A lot of learning can happen. What I just mentioned about us being nature and connecting to nature and taking care of our environment starts with ourselves. Do not underestimate the power that you have to change the world by working on yourself. We form the world. Each one of us is a cell of this place here on planet Earth. And so don't underestimate your power to make a difference. Don't underestimate your power to change and heal yourself. If you haven't yet visited the SmartBody SmartMind site, please do so. There's a lot there. There's 3 main pages. Make sure you look at the front page that tells you who this is for, how this is, how this works. Look at the program syllabus that outlines all of the content, how the labs are situated, the lessons. It's practical, it's educational. There are live calls, there's Q&A calls, there's a group forum. We have a lot of support. I have 9 professionals that are trained in somatic experiencing and other somatic practices that are in our forum on our main site. Everything lives on a website. They're answering your questions starting when we start next week all the way till July. So there is a lot that you get when you become a member. You also have the program for life. So if you start this year, when we do this again next year, you'll be at a different level to go deeper into the work. We have people who have been alumni since 2016, 15-ish, and they keep coming back because it's a way of living, a way of improving. And our improving and our living capacity and our healing capacity is infinite. It doesn't just end at the end of 12 weeks. So we close registration on Sunday. So now is the time to get in. It is open all day Sunday, and then we start on Monday with orientation week. I'm in there teaching pretty much every week throughout the course, except for when we have our break weeks, whether it's a Q&A or a training call or both. And then all of the audio neurosensory lessons, all of the video trainings are me teaching you. I don't hold back. I bring everything to the table when we're in this program live. And there's a lot of folks who are registered and excited to get going. So visit the site. Like I said, look at the syllabus page, look at the main page, check out the stories of our alumni. They're beautiful stories. Give them a little love, listen to some of them, read some of them. And then the FAQ page is a page in itself, which is educational. I actually just saw one of our members said that they read the FAQ page the other day, and even that gave them information about their bodies. So have a look, read, check it out, get curious. If you have a technical question, you can email us, support@irenelyon.com, and Crystal and our other team member, Diana, will get back to you. I am going to do one more call on Sunday. I've pretty much said everything I can say. I've given you the full kit and caboodle of how this work works, the levels at which it works at, your need to be mature and responsible and take the work and listen to your body and use our guidance and get support. There's a reason we've had people from 90 countries go through this. This is for humans to help you guys learn self-regulation so that you can just live more vital and empowered lives. So going to sign off for today. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for learning. Thanks for staying connected to the information. Thank you to Crystal for putting all these links in here. This video will live on, so if you're watching the recording and you caught it late, head back to the beginning and start from the beginning and watch the full almost 2 hours. Oh my goodness. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here, and maybe we will see you on orientation week in our Zoom room this Monday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific. Bye for now.